A United Nations report reveals new details on transactional sex by UN peacekeepers. And some of the most startling findings concern Haiti, the poorest nation in the Western Hemisphere. The Associated Press, which obtained a draft of this report, which is to be released later this month, found that members of the UN peacekeeping mission in the country had bartered goods for sex with more than 225 Haitian women. But the report, which was compiled by the UN's internal watchdog, looked at the problem of sexual abuse in all peacekeeping missions, which employ around 125,000 members. Now, according to The Guardian, some of the key findings were that 1/3 of alleged sexual exploitation involves minors or those under 18 years old. Help for victims is, quote, severely deficient. And on average, an investigation into these allegations takes more than a year. Now, in the case of Haiti, the report states that for rural women, hunger, lack of shelter, baby care items, medication, and household items were frequently cited as the, quote, triggering need. Now, those who conducted the investigation in Haiti interviewed victims who listed shoes, cell phones, laptops, perfume, and cash as some of the goods exchanged for sex. Now, in many of these instances, the women were unaware that the UN policy prohibits transactional sex. Now, for human rights activists in Haiti, this report is unfortunately nothing new. Ezili Dantò, human rights lawyer, joins us now. Ezili, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
What is your reaction to this report? Is there anything in it that you haven't heard before?
There's nothing I haven't heard before, but I think that it's always misleading when the media calls it or the UN calls it transactional sex, because, you know, they say it for themselves. You know, you can't have it both ways. You can't say that, well, they said 1/3 of those 225 are children under 18. Children cannot give consent, so it can't be transactional sex. It has to be rape. It's pedophilia. You know, we're not using the right words. And so we're acting that somehow the rural women in Haiti are doing some sort of fair exchange for this exploitation. Even, you know, we say at the Haitian Lawyers Leadership, all contact by a fiduciary, a power that's supposed to be about protecting and serving in that manner is rape, is exploitation, and it's not transactional sex. But we're not surprised by the figures. I think the figures are vastly understated.
And what have been some of the worst examples of sexual exploitation like this that you've documented in Haiti, that you've had people come to report to you?
Oh, my goodness. There's so many. You know, I was saying, you know, in 2004, when it first started to happen, it was such shock for the rural population. What your audience have to understand is that Haiti has the least violence in the Western Hemisphere, but yet it has a Chapter 7 peace enforcement shoot to kill mission with soldiers that are actually coming in from war zones and doing things that they do in war zone in a country where there is no violence, less violence than any of the other Caribbean countries people are going to visit for tourism. So a lot of sodomy for the women, things that anal sex that they didn't understand, didn't know anything about, that shocked them. We had in 2007 what I call probably the worst case that the UN has documented. It was a case where 120 Sri Lankan soldiers set up brothels, and they would take children off of the street in their cars, I mean not cars, but in their tanks, and bring them to these brothels to service the officers 24/7. That was by far the most, it was an amazing exploitation of these children, of these women, that we've ever experienced. And the devastating thing about that was that the Haitian Lawyers Leadership, which I had, we tried to get the UN to provide us with a report as to what happened to those soldiers, because 120 of those soldiers from Sri Lanka were deported, but the victims were left with no sorts of justice. Later on in 2009, now Sri Lanka is a country that's at war, has been at civil war with the Tamils for 26 years. There was a genocide in 2009. In that sort of, there was mass rapes in 2009. And I always wonder, if some of those soldiers that were deported out of Haiti were part of that rape. The fact that the Haitians never got any justice, perhaps if the UN had looked at that case and looked at those soldiers and punished those soldiers, perhaps those young girls who died, those Tamil girls who were raped massively at the end of that war in 2009 by Sri Lankan soldiers, perhaps some of which had rotated to Haiti, which we had denounced, may not, perhaps those lives could have been saved.
It's really absolutely horrific what you've been saying here. Now, we only have about 30 seconds left, but as quickly as you can you just explain to us what you think is at the root of this problem? Is it that there isn't any oversight, that there isn't any accountability? What's really going on that's causing this to happen?
Well, I mean, for the case of Haiti, I mean, I can't speak worldwide, but for the case of Haiti, we have an occupying force that's there, that's bored, that the people call tourista, that at night, you can pass any of the bases at night. You'll see lines of people, of women lining up to go inside. So the UN knows about this. Its officers allow this because they're going inside to service these officers. It's a culture. It's a patriarchal culture. It's back in the day, it was the spoils of war, and I think it's still soldiers believe that is part of what they get in terms of a benefit.
All right, Ezili, we have to leave it there, but thank you so much for joining us, and we have more information about that report in our resource well.